Hello. This is BF Binx, and I'm going to be reading The Whistler by Not One More Word tonight. A couple years ago, I was stressed out from college and big city life and decided to spend a long weekend in the woods doing what my city friends would consider utter lunacy. Something that us outdoorsy people consider nirvana. Deep woods, free camping, in the winter, alone. Wow, this sounds like the beginning of a missing persons report. If you are an experienced outdoorsman, it's pretty safe. Also, I take a secret pleasure in being the white trash warrioress that my dad always hoped I would be. I always hated the feeling of claustrophobia that came with being a female in the city. Avoiding eye contact, not walking alone at night. You know, when you're a girl alone out in the woods, you're in charge. You're safe within the warm embrace of your own solitary freedom. Or so I thought. I spent a few hours on the roads, the surroundings getting wilder and wilder as I drove. I ended up parking in a loud roadside ditch with a compass and a map and hiked up until I was about a mile's reach or so from some good ice fishing. I was at least 4 miles from the road. I made an extremely discreet camp in a clearing with just one little hole in the snow for my tiny tent and my tiny campfire. After a couple beautiful days of just hiking and relaxing around camp, I made a trek to the fishing hole. Everything was in utter winter stillness, crisp, and the only signs that I wasn't in a perfect vacuum were the twitterings of birds and the very distant rumblings of the half-frozen waterfalls. After a mile or so of crunching along in the snow, I silently celebrated my compass skills when I came out at the exact place I had intended to. I punched a hole in the thin crust of ice and sat down to get my fish on. My first catch came very quickly. After all, if you spent a few weeks under a frozen surface, you'd probably be hungry as shit too, wouldn't you? I was feeling oddly fatigued and jumpy, so I decided to just clean the fish here and now and take it straight back to the camp to cook. Yummy. I quickly realized my fish preparation skills were rusty at best. I cursed my lack of preparation as I cut myself for the second time. Something in my peripheral senses was irritating me, but I was very set in my task, focusing on the motions and the slippery mess. The thing in periphery was growing more irritating, like a buzzing of a fly or the yammering of a sibling. I carved and I hacked and I sliced my hand open freshly as the fish slipped out of my hands and into the snow. Frustrated, I shouted, "Fuck off with that whistling, will you?" Damn. Silence resumed, and then my heart stopped. Living in a college neighborhood, I had grown so accustomed to white noise that I had failed to recognize how grossly inappropriate this sound was in this context. The silence weighed down on me as I broke into a sweat, a cold sweat, a fearful sweat. The only reason a human would be this deep in the woods would be to hunt, and no hunter would give himself away like that. If he was whistling for any other reason, shouldn't he have reacted to my outburst, yelled something vulgar back, apologized, something? No, there was nothing, just the total stillness of the woods and the silence as pure as it was before I had even spoken. Unsure if maybe I had misheard the twitterings of a bird or something, I just decided the fish was a lost cause, slung my gear over my shoulder and headed for the camp. I trudged off in the woods, and about a quarter mile from camp I saw a large mass protruding from the snow. Apprehensive but drawn like a moth to the flame, I trudged up to what materialized in the closing distance as a moose kill. A big one. A really, really good moose kill. A clean shot through the upturned eye, staring directly at me. Staring at me and saying something. Saying something that was imposing a sense of dread on me, but a dread I couldn't translate. I ran. I don't know why, but I ran. I ran hard and I ran fast. In the snow and in the woods, everything looked the same. I knew I was moving south, and I knew I'd passed the camp on the east. I should have been okay. I I made for the road, eventually slowing down to a weary trudge, calming at the comforting sight of the woods clearing ahead to make way for the country roadway, but something was off. I looked to my left and saw my car 50 yards or so down and jogged to it. That felt better. To drive only 15 miles to the first motel was the first thing I should do. I had none of my belongings and no earthly idea why I'd just abandoned ship like that, but something felt weird. It was only as I was sitting up watching infomercials that night that it started to fall together. Why would the Park Service issue free camp passes for the same stretch of woods that they allowed hunting? The moose defied everything of my rudimentary understanding of hunting. Even with the snow to cool it, decomp starts quickly on an animal that size, so I don't know what was going on, but you'd have time for a quick few pictures, but you'd want to have it dressed quickly. And how could you ever even drag it back to the road? In the morning, in a sleep-deprived and paranoid state, I described everything I'd seen and thought I heard to a very confused park ranger. He seemed more vexed about the illegal hunting than any of my crazy city girl ramblings. He said he wanted to come pick me up and have me take him to where I thought the kill site was. I said I was only going to go if he brought a gun. Period. He sighed with exasperation and told me when to meet him. We rode out into the woods on an ATV, with me awkwardly riding on the back as if the back of the world's most awkward motorcycle. There's also a distinct smell of a carcass being dragged through the air. The ranger said he should take me back now. He asked where my camp was. I pointed in the direction of the drag marks. It looked like he was starting to share my unease. Back at the hotel, I washed my clothes in the sink and prepared to drive home in the morning. An unknown number called my phone, but it was just the park ranger. The moose had been dragged to my campsite. He described the scene as a huge mess. He wasn't sure if an animal had helped to make the mess, but one thing was clear. Someone had cut into my tent with a knife. I asked about the rest of my belongings, and he said darkly, "You don't want them back. They're covered in moose mess." So, what happens now? I said, "Well, miss, we're gonna just keep an eye out for this guy. I haven't heard of or seen anything like this ever before. I'm really sorry this happened." And that was it. No closure, no explanation. In the years that have passed, I've tried every different application of reason. A hunter who needed help but knew I was already gone. A deranged psychopath looking to make his second kill. One of the few friends I shared the story with envisioned him as some deep-wood Sweeney Todd. He dubbed him Moosey Todd. I still don't know why I didn't hear the gunshot. The whistling seems so vivid in my memory, but was it even real? One question has definitely been answered. I'll never go into the woods again alone.